All right, so we're talking about roots today. So I just want to check to see if I'm in the right place and if you know your roots. Hey, 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 hey. Let's go, Buffalo. Let's go, Buffalo. All right, so, well, I say that because anyone who's been in Buffalo for any amount of time knows that chant, right? And let's see if you really know. The Bills make me wanna. Oh, okay. We left Buffalo when I was 3 years old and lived in Santa Ana, California. My mother told me I was from Buffalo, not from New York City, but from Buffalo. I knew nothing about Buffalo. You know, what memory do you have as a 3-year-old? She married a Marine. We moved all across the country, ended up in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And I'm about 12 years old, 11 years old. Bill's first Super Bowl, right? And I'm like, that's Buffalo. That's Buffalo. I'm Buffalo, right? They can hear me?
That's only recording.
Okay.
That's not through the house.
All right, cool. That's Buffalo. I'm Buffalo. Okay, great. So I'm watching the Super Bowl, right? And Thurman Thomas is doing his thing, and Andre Reed going across the middle, Jim Kelly, boom, James Lofton, we got the Biscuit, we got Bruce Smith, and it's getting close, and it's down, and we're down by a couple of points, and Mr. Norwood comes, and it went wide. And it hurt. It hurt so bad. Not having been in Buffalo, not even having any connection with Buffalo at that time, other than I knew that's where I was from. Roots. They say that roots are the evolution from plants going from water to land. It's that connection. It's that connection. Just like I have a connection with Buffalo, I have a deep connection. And the beautiful thing about roots is that they soak up all of the water and all of the nutrients that are around them. When we created the African Heritage Food Co-op, that's what this is about. This is about soaking up the nutrients and the self-sustaining properties that are in our communities. So what do you mean by that? The hood or the east side or whatever you want to call it has looked like that for a long, long time. And one of the biggest reasons that it looks like that is we often give the jobs of fixing our community to people who aren't from our community, people who don't live in our community. And they're very well-intentioned and they're very, hey, power to the people, you know, but what happens is there's not a whole lot of money in saving the world. There isn't. So when you get to the point of, you know, this was great to do before I had children, this is great to do before I had a mortgage, this is great to do before then, now I have to go and live a life and think of my children. And they're not selfish for doing that, you know, that makes sense. But what happens is we have great policies and great things that happen in the neighborhood, but when the changing of the guard happens, those things go down because the next person may not be as good, may not be as wise, so forth and so on. But also, we started because we wanted people in the community, African Americans in the community, to understand that their roots went deeper than slavery. That's not the beginning for us. And that is signified in the colors that you see here. The colors that you see are a mix of a United Negro Improvement Association founded by Marcus Garvey, who created a flag for the for the continent of Africa, as well as it's a mix of the Ethiopian flag. And if you know anything about Ethiopia, they were the only African country to force out colonization, to fight against colonization. So this is created in rebellion. This is created in self-sufficiency. This is created saying we go deeper and beyond being conquered or enslaved, right? You may not know this, black folks in this country weren't slaves, they're enslaved. See, saying someone is a slave makes it seem like that's who they are. So they're supposed to be subservient, they're supposed to be docile, they're supposed to be whatever because they're slaves. They're not slaves, they were enslaved. Powerful people who were enslaved. So you see the black for the people, the red for the blood that was shed, the yellow for the sun, and the green for the land. So we want youth in our community who walk into an establishment to understand that here are your roots, young man. Here are your roots, young lady. Here are your roots, gender non-assigned. When they talk about roots and the purpose of roots, right? Again, we talk about water and inorganic nutrients that the roots pull up. When you look into East Buffalo community, there is a lot of dollars being spent there. There are businesses that come there are gas stations, there are corner stores, there's this, there's that. How do you have so many businesses and so much poverty? What happens is, one, nothing's being soaked up into the community, where the community can feed itself, serve itself, hire itself, support itself. Because if you create things that do not sustain themselves, they always have to be sustained by someone else. And if they always have to be sustained by someone else, they'll always be controlled by someone else. And I don't know about you, but I don't like to be controlled. I don't want someone telling me, hey, you can go to the bathroom right now. Hey, you can eat right now. And matter of fact, you can eat 2 eggs and a biscuit. I don't want a biscuit. I don't care. I'm providing you the food. You're going to eat what I tell you to eat. So our motto is anything less than ownership is unacceptable. So when AI was talking about anything but anything, I was just like, ownership. I felt it. So in 2016, I have an extensive history of working with nonprofits and in nonprofits. I've been the executive director. I've been a department director, a business consultant, dug ditches, you name it. I've probably done it. I sold Kirby vacuum cleaners, and that's a great story for another time. What I found was that nonprofits are like Band-Aids. They're like Band-Aids, and we need them, and they're important, but they're not sustainable for what we need in the long term. What do nonprofits have to do? We have to fight for grants. We have to go and hustle, and every year we don't know if the person who funded us this year is going to fund us next year. Anyone who's dealt with foundations, sometimes, food justice is hot this year, and then next year it's, we want to, look into spiders. Like, look into spiders, that's not my mission. And now you're trying to show how food justice is connected to spiders so you can get some funding, right? And then, who do I know at the foundation? Are they even gonna look at me? And then now you have to be invited to apply. So if I'm a person with a great idea, but no network, no connections, my great idea is me and 3 of my cousins doing great work with no support and no funding. So you have to create socially conscious businesses that sustain themselves. So now I don't depend, I still depend, but I'm trying to get to the point where we don't depend on funding or donations to where people are buying and that money is staying in the community they live in, right? And they can hire, and now we're not worried about checking a conviction box because we're making the decisions. We're not worried about racism, glass ceilings, so forth and so on, because we're making the decisions, right? If you have a woman-owned business, you have to worry less about discrimination against women because women own the business, right? Well, if you have a Black-owned business or a minority-owned business, then you're less worried about discrimination in that business because the decision makers are of the same ilk, if you will. So after going through all that, I had neck surgery. And when you have surgery, you're sitting on the ground and you're kind of thinking about death and legacy and like, what am I leaving behind? What's going to be here? So as I'm laying there and I'm thinking like, what have I done? And again, I've worked in nonprofits for over a decade. So I've given back to the community on a lot of levels, but I didn't create anything that was so sustainable and that was going to really bless my community. So I was sitting on the couch and I was reading all these civil rights stories. Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, all this. And I'm like, man, with all these great leaders, why does my community still look like my community? With all these great people, with all these funds that have come to fight poverty. We have funding to fight poverty. But our funding doesn't fight poverty. Our funding subsidizes poverty because you have to be poor to receive it and poor to continue receiving it. So you have the person who's working, who can't work 40 hours a week at this low-paying job because as soon as they work 40 hours a week, they can't get daycare, they can't get health services, they can't get this. So the funds are subsidizing the poverty. You stay poor, we'll take care of you. It's not really going to helping people get out of poverty. So our mission, to eradicate food deserts, right? And this is more important than just food access because, and I don't knock anyone who's providing food access to the community. It's important. But more important is food ownership and ownership of your food system. Because again, it needs to be in the community that it's in. Starting here in Western New York, in hopes for a just and livable world wherein inner city communities can eat, better employ themselves. Someone say themselves. Someone say themselves. And prevent predatory pricing. So when you go into a gas station, you're like, oh, that banana is $1. Is it made out of gold? Through giving ownership to the residents. And that's what it's about. All right, so that's small lock, Alex. We began in 2016. We organized a meeting. And I remember because I had a neck brace and my son James was like maybe 4-5 months. And he was in the stroller and I'm walking him. I couldn't drive, so we would walk from the house to the Meriwether Library, and I would just pitch the idea to whoever would listen. We need a food co-op. We need a food co-op. Wouldn't it be great if we had a food co-op? People were like, yeah, okay, maybe, possibly. We think that's cool. And people started catching hold. And then they came out to the meeting we had in June at the Johnny B. Wiley Stadium. We had about 30 people. And we spoke to folks. I talked for maybe 20 minutes. And then people were like, all right, let's do it. No, let's do it. So we collected $30 from everyone right then. And August 8th, we went out to the farms and bought as much as we could and brought it back. And the first location we brought it to was on Kensington and Bailey. And that's before, now there's a grocery store in Kensington and Bailey, but I'm not salty about that. Right, so here are the community share boxes. And I talk about, there's a documentary called Solar Mamas. If you've never seen it, you should Google it. It's called Solar Mamas. What they did is they took illiterate women from Northern Africa and the Middle East and taught them to do solar panels, like solar engineers. So they took them to Britain for like 6 months, and then they brought them back to their communities. The reason they picked the women was because women weren't leaving. They were the nucleus or the nuclei of their communities, right? So they taught them, brought them back, and they taught everyone else, and they were able to make a living off of that. The co-op is a similar principle. It's given power to the people that aren't leaving, giving power to the people that are there and are going to continue to be there. And I always use this example. I am not a woman. Shocked. I know, surprising. So when you talk about women issues, they're always a second thought for me because I don't live in that space. I don't live in that zone. So no matter how compassionate I am, no matter how much of an ally I am, I'm never going to be a better woman advocate than a woman. You understand? It's the same thing for people in frontline communities. You can be my ally. You could have, I marched with Dr. King. Good. I'm glad. But then what did you do? Nope, never mind. Sorry. I'll leave that alone. You could do all that stuff, but you're never going to worry more about what's happening in the community I live in than I am. And that's why I always press upon people to help and give resources to folks that are there and that are living there, right? And they may need technical assistance, but technical assistance doesn't mean technical ownership. And technical assistance doesn't mean technical control, because that's what happens. We'll give you $1,000, but now I'm a board member. Who are you? I don't even know you. Well, it's my money. Well, keep it. We'll figure it out. They're like, I don't know why we brought this guy. October 20th, 2016, we incorporated. Big shout out to the Lexington Co-op for hooking us up with the short guy over here to my right, Mr. Johnson, who was a board member at the Lexington Co-op, and they paid for us to incorporate. And that's what I mean by really giving assistance to frontline communities. Not saying, hey, we want to now dictate how you operate, when you operate, what you operate, but we believe what you're doing is dope, and how can we support you? Right? So, people don't know, like, in co-ops, we have 9 principles in a co-op. And one of the principles of a co-op is to help start other co-ops. So it's different than other businesses. If you want to start a co-op, people who have co-ops are obligated to help you, or they're breaching their own rules. All right, so in 2017, we added mobile markets because we found, and I'll say this by the way, the person who put this together is that lady on the right side of me, Ms. Frederica Barton Harris. So you see a lot of pictures of me in here. That was not by my design. She did that. Because we were noticing with the CSA boxes we did monthly, we had stuff left over, and then we had people who couldn't get there on that day. So they needed access to healthy fruits and vegetables, so we had to get out there and make that happen. G-Bond, where we met Dana, and here are a list of a bunch of partners that we work with currently. And we do mobile markets, and we're always looking to expand where we offer mobile markets. So you can give us a call, our information will be there on the end. Another thing roots do is that they stabilize a tree or a plant. Can I have everyone stand up, please? All right, standing up, you're good. Okay, now, partner up. You don't have to leave, just partner up, all right? One of you will be one, and one of you will be two, okay? Two is gonna stand like this, and one is gonna push a little bit. Okay, ready? Go, just a little push, a little push, a little push, a little push. Okay, that's nice. Now, don't anybody sue me. Now, two, I want you to stand like this, a little firmer like this, right? So then one, I want you to give a little push again. Okay, you sit down, you sit down. The first demonstration signified shallow roots. It's a little more wobbly, right? It's a little more, whoa. The second one demonstrated firm roots, deep. That's relationship. That's community relationship. That's community connection. That's real relationship. And that is what helps the community, right? Being a part, I see, or serving those and assisting those with real relationship. So I admonish you that if you're not from the community, and you want to be a part, you want to be of assistance, and you want to get involved, take the time to really find out where the roots are, right? And the roots aren't necessarily in the color, right? Now, I'm as pro-black as anybody else, but I understand that the roots aren't in the colors. You can say, I don't want to end with this, but I'll be quick. So, let me do this first. So, I was talking to someone, they brought a diversity liaison on who was from the same area they were from, out in like the sticks, right? And the person was African American, but their upbringing was a traditional city African American. So that person coming into my community isn't much different than someone who doesn't look like me coming into my community. Because they don't even know like slang, lingo, what? All right, and not every black person speaks like that, I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying, there's a sort of inner city dialect when you grew up poor that you speak. But you take the kid from South Buffalo who grew up on hot dogs and bologna, and we're talking, he's like, oh oh, I get that too. Because he grew up in the same socioeconomic kind of a thing that I grew up in. And I bring that out just because when you're looking for partners and you're looking for folks to represent you, make sure they have intimate knowledge of the struggle that they're going to help fight. In 2019, we got our building in Niagara Falls, grand opening in Niagara Falls. All those people I've never seen again. Open our Buffalo Carlton and Locust, right in the heart of the fruit belt, and we're trying to raise $1 million now to make this be what it needs to be in that community, right? So we have things that you can sign up for if you're interested in anything, being a part, helping. We need you, all right? And I'll also say this, you don't have to be black to help us. No, I'm asked that often. Do I have to be African? Do I have to be Irish to have a drink on St. Patty's Day? No, I do not. Okay, we've also paid it forward with we have volunteers, continue to grow, and we do our Each One Teach One program, where we're teaching people to grow, youth to grow. We're bringing together elders and youth together in an entrepreneurial spirit. And we have a Kitty Stand, where we're teaching youth to be entrepreneurs in partnership with the Buffalo Soul Roll. So even as we're beginning, we're giving back to be rooted and to collect all the water and the nutrients in our community so we can be self-sustaining. All right, this 20 minutes flew by. All right, and even though we're growing, we've donated hundreds of food, thousands of pounds of food. We've given away tickets. We've continually given back. Even though we're not in the black yet, we're giving back from day one because that's what we're about. And also Black Business Bazaars, allowing other minorities who are table topping to benefit from any success that we've benefited from. All right, I see Dana walking up here. I'll leave this. We, the community, must save ourselves through ownership. Thank you.